and Peace. A week to go and Pops would be off again. This time to America, Canada and Mexico. He was already getting nervous. If only I could drive or go by boat or even row across. This is what he thought every time he had to fly. He hated it. He hated everything about it. Saying goodbye to Pen and the kids, queuing. He still hates queuing. Wondering about waiting for the command to board. He reckons terminals are one of the loneliest places on the earth. Then the actual flying, sweaty hands, stomach churning upside down every time there is the slightest bit of turbulence. And when it's smooth, wondering if the engines are still working. And of course the stuff the hostess puts in front of you to eat. Juggling plastic knives and forks, hoping your drink doesn't tip over the chef's special dessert. Or is it the meat course? And Pops has got them wrong way round. Then Pops feeling guilty because he was wishing he had said no to the invitations and asking himself if God had really called him to preach the gospel and wishing he was looking out of the window and could see those beautiful patchwork fields that say, "Welcome home to Heathrow. Now fasten your seatbelts. At last we were about to land. Bump. We've made it. Hallelujah. All is forgotten until the next time." For 2 weeks, Pops sees the God doing wonderful things in people's lives and asking for forgiveness for ever doubting Jesus and his mighty gospel. But then all of a sudden he's alone again in Chicago airport waiting for his flight to Calgary, and here come the sweaty hands and all the fear comes flooding back. Pops thinks of Penny. She loves flying. What's not to like, she says. A nice comfy seat, time to relax and nice read, someone serving me drinks and meals I haven't had to cook, even time to write my Christmas cards and maybe do a bit of knitting. This was in the olden times when sharp knitting needles were allowed and there was a bit more legroom. Right, that's it. This is ridiculous, Pops said to himself, then to the Lord. Lord, I have 3 hours before my flight. I am preaching about the love and power of God and I'm scared stiff of flying. I'm a hypocrite. I am locking myself into this toilet and I'm not coming out until you set me free from this uncontrollable fear. Please, Lord. And in that toilet, God did set Pops free. And with a skip and a jump, off went Pops to board his flight. Pops found himself in the middle of a Roman Catholic convention, maybe 4 or 5 dozen priests and nuns off to the conference in Calgary. Pops had a priest on one side and a nun on the other. They started talking about religion. Pops said he didn't know much about religion, but he did know Jesus. In that case, you must come back to the Mother Church, they said. Pops thanked them for their kind invitation and asked them who the head of the church was. The Pope, of course, they replied. Oh, the head of my church is Jesus. Maybe you would like to come back to mine. Pops replied with a bit of a cheeky smile. Pops was a very young man back then, and hopefully over the years he has become a little more gracious. Hopefully. The seatbelt sign came on. The flight was on its final descent into Calgary Airport. The pilot apologised in advance for the bumpy descent into Calgary, explaining because the airport was so close to the Rocky Mountains, the flights had to descend slightly faster than usual, and there would be some slight turbulence. There was a lot of turbulence. Everyone suddenly became very quiet. All around Pops, prayer beads came out, and heads began to bow, but Pops was as happy as anything and started sharing with his new friends what God had done for him in the airport and with no interruptions. 2 weeks' time he was off again, this time flying from Spokane to Guadalajara, courtesy of Mexican Airways. The pilot thought it would be nice to give the passengers a free trip round Mount St. Helens that had just erupted. 1 or 2 passengers seemed to enjoy the view, but most were looking for their sick bags. That was good. Would you like to go around again? The pilot asked. And so, having put 10 pesos in the slot, around they all went again. Pops thought British Airways was never as good fun as this. But then sadly the pilot headed south and all became calm. Until, that is, somewhere over Mexico the plane hit a huge electrical storm. Looking out of the window, Pops was reminded of the films he'd seen of the Second World War, a desert battle in El Alamein. Everywhere there were huge explosions of light and thunder, and Pops worshipped the God of all creation. Outside there was war, inside his heart there was perfect peace. Now people were being sick. Baggage was falling out from the lockers. People were being lifted off their seats even with their seatbelts on. The pilot informed everyone over the screams he was going to make an emergency landing. On the third attempt, the plane touched the landing strip and finally came to a stop. The passengers were then informed as soon as possible the pilot would take off again because the airport where they had landed was not international and therefore no one could disembark. Immediately there was a stampede for the exits and people banging on the doors pleading to get out. Pops suggested to her hostess that it may help if the pilot said they would take off again when the storm had passed, but the flight deck remained silent until 2 hours later when the weather calmed down. The seatbelts flashed and the pilot told everyone it was now safe to continue their journey. Pops is a bit of a scaredy pants, but God had put peace in Pops's heart. That really does pass all understanding.